Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Sales is another word for problem solving. We all have problems that we're looking to solve, and we know that there are solutions out there. One of the big challenges for business leaders, entrepreneurs, folks that are starting their own business or transitioning into a new one is sales. Begs the question, why do we struggle? Why do we struggle with sales? Well, this could be due to a lack in confidence, comfort, just not wanting to be salesy. We want to help our customers. We know we can. We complicate the process. This podcast is designed to help folks like you improve at sales and problem solving through process, practice, framework, and thinking. I'm Mike Simmons. I'm the founder of Catalyst Sale. This episode is brought to you by the Catalyst Sale Game Plan. It's our approach to goal setting and execution. You can head to catalystsale.com/game plan for more information. I'm really excited to have Shelton Banks on the podcast today. He's the CEO of Rework Training and co-founder of Sales for the Culture. Sales for the Culture may be familiar to many of you. This is the second time we've had someone from Sales for the Culture join us. Check out the earlier episode from this year with DeJuan Brown for more information. Shelton, it is absolutely awesome to have a conversation. We finally came across each other, like a bunch of other people have been on the podcast recently, which everybody's going to be like, why is this dude continue to pitch Clubhouse? This is not about pitching Clubhouse, but we came across each other in a Clubhouse room, and that led to another. And I sent you one of those, I think I said in the actual Clubhouse chat, I said, hey, you've come across my profile a couple of different times or in my feed. I thought it'd be awesome to connect. And we all had a laugh, and I think a couple of other people had a laugh. But man, thanks for doing this.
Oh, no problem, man. Yeah, you got me on LinkedIn. You reeled me in with the canned LinkedIn message, and I was sold.
Why the heck do people do that crap?
Oh, it's funny. I feel like somebody taught it. And sometimes I want to say it's just easier just to send a connection. Just like send a connection. Like if I know who you are, send a connection. I feel like you're not selling me anything.
I'm telling you, you do more damage when you send just a BS LinkedIn request that tries to demonstrate that we know each other than if you just send a blank request with no other information. Like if you send it with no other information, I think either you heard it on the podcast or somebody I know suggested we connect up with each other, and I'll accept those just because I've got so many of them that you go through. I mean, I'll take a look and I'll see how we're connected, and I'll do that. But when you send the crap stuff, most of the time you just get ignored.
100%, especially if you're in sales. If you're a sales leader, it's like, I cut through BS all day, dude. Like you can't BS me with this. Don't make me overthink. Like I'm already overthinking. Don't make me overthink with BS. So I'm like, yeah. But man, yeah, glad we connected, man. I'm glad that it worked out. Glad that we connected on LinkedIn and Clubhouse and finally here.
Well, we've got a couple of different folks that we know in our mutual networks, and we'll get into a little bit, but co-founder of Sales for the Culture. Why is Sales for the Culture important for people to know about?
Oh, man. You talk about this diversity and inclusion thing, and so many organizations are focused on, like, how can we get more people in the door? That does nothing if the people that you're getting in the door are going out the back door and you don't know it. And yeah, man, it's just, you think about the culture of companies, think about the culture of sales. It looks different depending on where you're from, where you were raised. And so, Sales for the Culture is just like this ecosystem, this space that allows people from diverse backgrounds, Black people, guys that look like me, that understand that different culture. It not only incubates it and makes something better later on, but also it just, we can feel at home. It's a place where I can feel at home, man. That Sales for the Culture, dude. I could go on a tangent on that, man. Sales for the Culture. That in a nutshell.
So how did you stumble into sales? Like, how'd you get into this game?
Oh, dude. So, my background, man, didn't ever go to college. I'm a high school dropout. Dropped out of high school not because I was dumb or anything, but my mom, she suffers from bipolar, and she had just bought a house. I grew up in prior to my mom buying a house, I grew up in a really interesting household. So a lot of people lived in one house. My grandfather, God rest his soul, was a, military guy, and kind of was like his way or the highway, right? So like any idea that wasn't his, like it was basically a dumb idea, It's like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why, And so when my mom got her own place, it was like this freedom for me. Like, man, I got away from my grandparents' house, and it was me and my mom living on our own. And when she got sick and had to be admitted to the hospital, I didn't want to go back and stay with my grandparents. Like I was just like, I don't want to be stuck in that ecosystem my mom escaping, as it were. You know, it was liberating for me. And I said, like, man, I'm better off figuring this out on my own than going back to that ecosystem. And so I dropped out of school to start working to pay for my mom's mortgage while she was recovering. And at 16, there's not that many jobs that'll give you, it's not that many companies that'll give you an opportunity with no GED yet, no college degree. And the type of jobs that were available to me were on Craigslist. And one of those jobs on Craigslist was co-knives. So the guys that cut knives and penny and those demo guys, they gave me an opportunity, man. They said, like, well, they gave everybody opportunity, but for me, it was special for me at the time because I'm like, I really need this. Like for the guys that, I got 45-year-olds in this training class doing Cutco knives. I'm like, that's great. Not sure how you got here, but I know I need this I need this job. And if you're not going to do a background check or a D check or none of that, like I'll figure it out. So the first sales job was Cutco knives out of necessity. That was enough to kick it off because I made it 2 years off Cutco knives. Cutco knife, commission only salary to be able to pay for my mom's mortgage. And so that was the catalyst.
Is this just knocking on doors?
Knocking on doors, but no. So I had a strategy. No, I refused to knock on doors. I was like, I did that for like a week and was like, this isn't me. I can't knock on doors, but I got to figure this out. And so, man, I would go, you're going to talk about me, but like I would go to retirement homes and senior citizens homes. And I would basically just spend time with older people playing chess and, listening to their stories. And, I would always do it between like 3 and 6 o'clock when I knew that like, dinner's going to have to come up. And I would, spend time with them. And at the end of the story, I would like bust out these knives and they would just they would buy because of me, because I was spending time with them. I barely did a demo. I want to say I probably cut 3 pennies in my 2-year career as a Cutco knives person. But man, people would buy these $600 knives on a payment plan just because I was spending time with them.
That's absolutely awesome. What was so I am disappointed to know that you weren't cutting pennies and cutting through like Coke cans and doing all that other kind of stuff. Cause that's what I envisioned it. So what was the thing where you said, look, I knocked on doors for a little bit. This just isn't going to work out. There's got to be a better way to do it. Like, why, like how'd you go through the problem solving process to just say there's a better way? I'm not going to do it the way that everybody else is doing it. There's got to be something else here. What's your process for solving problems like that?
Yeah. So one, it was inconvenient. So like it was a hot day and I got to wear this Cutco blue shirt that's a button up. And my second door that I knocked on, the person actually let me in. So like Cutco taught me a script and they taught me sales training. And the person let me in. We laughed. Well, he let me in probably out of pity and was like, dude, why are you out in this blue shirt? And nothing? Like, what are you doing? And we were just talking. Like we were just building a relationship. I didn't cut a penny then. Like we were just talking. He was laughing the fact that I was sweating. It was hot outside. He's like, what are you doing out here? Why aren't you in school? I get to telling him about my story and what was going on. And he had this moment of like, man, all right, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to do this, but make sure you get back in school. Make sure you do something with your life. Don't get stuck here. And I said like, man, if I could just get in front of people and just tell them like, look, this is what I'm going through life right now. People, like I walked away from that guy with a relationship. Like, he was in the community and he like, man, said, keep up. Like, let me know what you need. Like keep me up to date on your story. I said, like, dude, if I can get that, like, where can I get that? Like, where can I go and repeat what just happened here? And it wasn't knocking doors. Like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like nobody's home. Like, I'm like, it's got to be a place where people are home. Where is that audience? And I didn't say audience at the time, but I said, where are people always home? At the retirement home. Like people are always home at the retirement home. Let me go there.
It's amazing what happens when you kind of shift your perspective and you start looking at things different. There's a guy I know, his name is Jeff Noel. He's been on the podcast before. One of his sayings is when you change what you see changes. And this just reinforces that for me. Like when you change what you see changes. You start shifting your perspective in the way that you can approach things and just asking those questions. Like I think it's fascinating how often we find ourselves just doing work because this is the thing that's in front of us rather than asking the question, is this the right thing? Is there a better way to do it? Why am I doing it? How can I do it differently? Like just a couple of basic freaking questions. Why do you think we struggle with those questions? I actually, one is this, does that resonate with you? And two, why do you think we struggle with questions? And if it doesn't resonate with you, then.
Oh, no, 100% it resonates with me. I think we want to be smart. I think it's just like this desire to I want to be smart. And somebody else, one of my pet peeves, I hate anecdotal recycling of knowledge where somebody says something that's smart and they make it seem like it applies in all circumstances. It doesn't. It's just it doesn't. Each situation is so, I'm not encouraging people to always reinvent the wheel, but to some extent, each situation is relatively unique. And sometimes you just gotta work through it. You got to work through it to figure out for yourself if the situation is unique or not. And I think, for me, sales, so, after my Cutco job, I ended up, got my GED and jumped from job to job, kind of just looking for an opportunity, and ended up in banking. So somebody gave me an opportunity as a part-time teller at a bank. And not sure how much you know about banking, but banking is 100% sales, consumer banking at least. So if you go into a branch and you work with a teller, if you don't have an account there, the job of the teller is to get you to talk to a banker, or get you to open up a credit card, or get you to do something in the bank. And while most, tellers aren't that good at it, oh, dude, I crushed it. I went in and got really, really good at it, to the point where I was able to, grow that sales of people. I was able to grow in my career, but it was literally because I was willing to put in the work. Forget the anecdotal knowledge, let's just work and figure it out, dude. That's just been my mindset, man. And I wish to answer your question, why most people overthink and ask questions, I think, they're scared to work. They're scared to work and scared to fail will probably be, the best answer I would have for you.
I think it's fascinating that the follow-up one that you had was not just, hey, I'm going to go out and go where the people are. Now I'm actually going to go to a place where the people come to me. And it's hard for people to get that. It's hard for people to say, am I better off in a role where I go out and I find people and bring them in, or I connect with others and do that? Or am I better off in a role where people are just going to be drawn to and find me? And I think there's an industry where this is pretty clear. And one of my brothers is in the industry. He's in real estate, and you can be a realtor, and everybody knows a realtor. You throw a stick and they can tell you can hit a realtor. Everybody knows a realtor. Now there are real estate agents who will work a neighborhood and work a community, and then there are real estate agents who work for home builders, and they're still slinging the same thing. They're selling houses, but in one instance, people are coming together under a brand associated with a home builder and a master plan community. And in the other instance, someone's really just kind of having to work it and grind it out relative to building out a network. And the reason I share that story is I think there's more than one way, and there's more than one way to skin a cat, and hopefully not with a Cutco knife, but there's more than one way to skin a cat as you go through this stuff. And there I go. I'm going to get PETA irritated with me, but there's just a number of different ways that you can go out and do it. You just have to be, I think you got to be clear about what you're actually trying to accomplish. So after banking, where'd you go next?
Yeah, so banking, I stayed in banking for a while, man. So I went, so kid with no college degree with a GED, went from a part-time teller to a personal banker at a small bank, and did a really good job of talking to people of my community and just educating them on this is banking, and they like me. I was the scrappy, young 19-year-old in a branch that was just different from all the people that were buttoned up and tight, and just had this, I call banking fake professionalism of just buttoned up and tight. And no, that wasn't me. I was just look, I don't know why they gave me a job here, and people would laugh and have a good time. And so I went from a part-time teller to a personal banker. And then I got fired from my first job, in banking, and, rightly so, tough figuring it out. And then I end up getting picked up by another branch, a bank, as a personal banker. And then they got me my investment licenses. So they said hey, if you want a job here, you need to get your Series 6 and 63. And so I said, here's an opportunity. Why not? I'll take it. I passed the Series 6 and 63 exam. So I became a licensed banker. And then, and so that's very much sales again, right? So I'm just like selling a financial institution and investment products. And then 6 months later, I got promoted to a branch manager. So I became a VP. I was like 24, 23, 24, young. You have a picture in the window at a bank. And now I'm selling steel, but I'm also learning how to manage individuals. And so that went relatively well until I got fired again. And then I ended up in the tech industry.
So you're getting fired a couple of times. How do you deal with the adversity of that? Like when that happens, what do you do?
Go drink and deal with I don't have a good answer for that, Mike. You get fired, it's tough. It's just like, are they firing you? Are they firing your work? In my instance, the second time I got fired, I got fired for doing what I felt was right. And so it's like, oh, you get fired for something that you get fired for something. It's just like, all right, how am I going to make money? And honestly, it was a blow. I had to just and I accepted the blow, but I would have people that would reach out and say hey, come back and sell some commission only stuff. I'm like, oh, I can't go back to I came off a salary and now you want me to, and it just took time for me to work through the blow, man. There is no easy way around it. You literally, it's you scrape your knee, you fall, you scrape your knee, it hurts. You put a Band-Aid on it, but it still takes time to heal. It's still going to itch. It's still going to aggravate you. And it just took time, man. It took time. But I mean, larger scheme of things, I think just remembering to be happy, it's trying to find small reasons to be happy would probably be the only thing that I could to offer up, or being grateful maybe is more appropriate. You're still waking up in the morning and you still possibly got food on the table and you still are able to go off and look for new work are probably the only things that I can truly say. But as far as the feeling, no, it sucks. It sucks.
And you're not the only one who's ever gone through it. I'm sure if you go into your network and you ask some questions, everybody's got an experience like that. I remember I was put on plan when I was at a company, and when I was put on plan, the message I got basically was, look, here's the deal. I'm going to put you on plan because that's the way things work here, but the end result's going to be the same. So you can take your time and keep working through the plan, or you can go out and find something else while you're doing it. I did both. And I had a recruiter call me a week before on a role, and I ignored the recruiter. And then when I got other than I could talk to a mentor first, where I called, I was just like, hey, I'm shocked by what happened. Is there anything I should be doing or thinking about that might change things? And we'd just gone through an acquisition. We were changing it. It was an acquisition, a merger of equals. But anyhow, long story longer, net result was going to be, I wasn't going to be part of the team. So I called the recruiter back. I'm like, hey, got your call. I didn't get a chance to get back with you. Happy to have a conversation. So I was just fortunate enough to be able to take advantage of that kind of opportunity and go back through it. But it was one of the best things that happened to me because my career went on a different trajectory. And had that not happened, I probably would have stayed inside that organization for a couple more years. And who knows, I might have been doing the same thing that I was doing then. And
100%. How long was that experience? How long were you at the organization for?
Yeah. So I'm the traditional kind of 7-year itch guy. I worked at UPS for 7 years. I worked for that organization for about 7-8 years, and then worked for the next organization I was at for just about 8 years. So same kind of thing. And what I found in that, after looking at it, when I look back and reflect on it, I realized that a lot of times I hung around in places because of loyalty, a loyalty to the business. And many times I could have left a little bit earlier. And I didn't realize that until there are 2 instances where it happened, and I had to relearn it again. But the first place I left after 7 years was UPS. And I just remembered how stressful the operation was. Then I walked my kid, who at the time was probably 2 years old, 3 years old, around the air operation, and saw the same stuff that I was stressed out about 3 years ago going on inside that place. And I thought, holy crap, I could still be here doing this and not learning anything new, not getting any better, yet still doing it. So I was probably inside that organization, different roles inside the organization, but I was inside that company for about 7 years. So things were so much better after I left, but go ahead.
Oh, were they really better though? I feel like we gotta, when I talk to people about their careers, like you gotta kind of normalize that. You stay for 7. For me, is 3. Like that was my 3 years of. You get to a point where all right, I learned what I could, and you're probably gonna need to move on. I like to call it the your grandparents, your grandma's baby effect happens. Is usually what happens.
Walk me through that.
Your grandma's baby effect. So for your grandparents, they change your diapers.
Okay.
Your grandparents change your diapers. They will never ever view you as a grown man. They will never ever be when you go over there. My grandma to this day, my baby, it would always be my baby, and it'd always be, oh, remember when it's just this nostalgic. I'm always, there's this moment that just they'll see me on TV, they'll see me just doing great things, but I will always be my grandparents' baby. And at companies, I feel like that tends to happen. Of man, you go to a company, wherever you start at, unless you're just leadership from the jump. But if you start at a position, entry level, anywhere between entry level and leadership, usually the person that brought you in is just you can grow. Sure, you're grown, but you'll always be their baby. And to some extent, no matter how much you grow, that person, somebody is going to always look at you as your grandma's baby. You're the grandma's baby effect is going to happen. And you can't get frustrated from it. You can't, that's just a natural, as humans, we just do that. And so you got to realize oh, that's going to happen. I've yet to see a person that, although they won't say it's the grandma baby effect, I've yet to see a person or talk to a person that hasn't happened to, where they say I got to this point, I got really frustrated and I couldn't get above this thing, but I end up going somewhere else and they pay me more money and they appreciate me. And it's no, they didn't appreciate you more. You just you were somebody else's kid over there. And then you went over somewhere else and now they, oh, this is the new, they saw you as an adult, so to speak, right? Anybody that meets you as an adult will always consider you as an adult. Anybody that meets me in high school, all my high school friends, they still act they still remember and act like we're in high school sometimes. And it's just I got 2 kids, but the grandma's baby effect, dude, to tell me that hasn't happened. The grandma's
You've
baby
completely shifted my perspective on this.
Yeah,
that is because I was one of those people who, another thing I learned was you find new opportunities inside the business to help diversify experience and exposure and whatnot. But as you go through it, I still probably would have been better financially. Things would have been better had I gone to other places. Now, I don't know that I would have still had the same opportunity. And it's hard to go back in time and kind of think through and think, yeah, you know what, I would have figured it out. But one of the reasons why I was able to move into those new roles, whether it was from what would have been, today they call it customer success, but back then it was a learning manager kind of role, learning consultant type role. I wouldn't have been able to move into an AE or an account executive role inside a new organization. It was easier for me to make the jump inside the organization because they knew the chops I had and skills, and they were willing to take a chance. So I think it's an interesting balance where you will always be grandma's baby, and how can you take advantage of the opportunities inside that organization? So maybe if you're grandma's baby and grandma really likes you a lot, they'll give you a chance to spread into different areas. As I do the same thing that you just said, you hate when people do, when they're like, hey, someone takes this story and tries to apply it in a bunch of different ways, and ultimately it goes nowhere. But yeah, that's what I just did to grandma's baby.
Oh, but that's exactly right. I feel it's on for me, moving up to that next level. So, and I feel I recognize this early on, oh man, they're looking at me as this little scrappy kid that made mistakes. I would always ask, I've planned my career to this point where I would find the next role that I would want to be in. I would look at the job description and what do I need to, sure, they're not going to give me the additional pay. And if they did, it's not going to be nowhere near what I could get paid. But I know I need to learn this. And so at some point in my journey, it's all right, this job now becomes my education for the next job. I am strategically planning, what do I need to accomplish here so that I can say in an interview and I can apply for a job, have you ever done Tableau? No, but let me now go ask Mike. Hey, Mike, I know I can't be you. Teach me Tableau. Let me help you and sit in on your Tableau meetings. I'm going to do that. And sure, you would never, I'm Mike, I know Tableau now, promote me. You're like, yeah, but there's plenty more stuff that you need to learn. And yet you were just on plan last month, Shelton. So I don't know, like you spend way too much time in the game room, Shelton. And it's like, dude, I haven't been in the game room for a year, Mike. But yeah, I saw you 2 years ago in the game room, 30% of the time. And it's just like, all right, well, new organization. I know Tableau now. Courtesy of Mike Simmons.
It's absolutely awesome because that happens too. Because like, hey, I remember when you did this. And those I remember when, like, I'm telling you, there's some people when they see me with near a bottle of tequila, they're going to find a different place to go. Like they have no interest. I could also say, I haven't touched Cuervo in forever. And that's a different kind of tequila than the better stuff. But yeah, it's amazing how we create these images and those images imprint. And then it's really hard to break those images because, well, we've got grandma's baby there. Man, you shifted my perspective. This is good stuff.
Grandma's baby, man. And so, yeah, man, whenever I realized like I'm getting grandma's baby, it was just like I went on, I'll say relatively, I got, I'm not saying destructive, but it was just like, all right, let me go figure out how to break something. Like I'm in this, this ecosystem, I'm in my role. And I would, say like, hey, like, let me see if I could do this easier with my eyes closed. Like, I don't want to do it this way because like, this is like, it's actually hard. And I feel like I could do it better based off what I know. And if I was in grandma's baby mode, I would just take a shot downfield at it. And sometimes it would work. Sometimes it wouldn't. It worked more times than not. It works more time, but then I learned the lessons I learned for it equipped me to, do what I do today.
So before we turned the mics on, we were talking a little bit about just the day and the kind of roller coaster of life and stuff that just kind of happens. And we are in one of those professions where every day has the potential to be a roller coaster, and many times you don't even see it coming. Like you go around the corner and all of a sudden there's a freight train that comes and smacks you, or you go around the corner and there's a big old pot of gold as things are really good. How do you deal with the emotional roller coaster, the challenges of being in a profession where you're dealing with people, you know that you're not going to be able to control decision making. There's so much stuff that's out there, and you're going to have these highs and lows. And you're sitting there with a White Sox hat on, and I shared with you that I'm a Jets fan, and now we've kind of come together with the emotional roller coaster. But what's your process? How do you handle the highs and lows of life or this game or just things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I always have this big picture. I try to keep the big picture in front of me for the most part. But I think anything that I start, so I have this concept I use, and I've been doing a lot of coaching lately, for not only people, going through the program, but just people in general. And there's this exercise that I came up with, and I got it from a book, Principles by Ray Dalio. Life Principles by Ray Dalio. You familiar?
I am familiar with it. Yeah.
Okay. So this isn't necessarily in a book, but this is how I just like interpreted it when I got it, and it's been working for me. So like I look at my life like an organizational chart, right? Where you got like a CEO at the top, and like they report to different people. And think of my goals in my life as like I personify my goals as people, right? And I asked myself the question a long time ago, like what do all my goals report up to? Like, who do my goals report to? Like, there's a goal that's the CEO goal that basically is like the goal that every other goal that, reports up to. And I struggled for a little bit, but then I read the book, and in the book, he talks about, like two things that are important: meaningful, purposeful work, right? So work that has purpose, and meaningful relationships. Meaningful relationships, purposeful work. And you put the two together and it equals happiness. Like, man, like happiness. Like, yeah. And so for me, like my CEO goal was happiness. Like my goal, I want to be happy. And I know that if purposeful work isn't there and if meaningful relationships aren't there, that I probably won't be happy. And so when I go through these roller coasters, I usually evaluate, if I'm at a low, I'm like, what's missing here? And, if it's something that's involving people, like if I got to just have some tough conversations, I usually do the same for them. It's like, why am I I'm about to have a tough conversation with somebody. It's upsetting me. I'm like annoyed. And I'm like, well, what's missing here? Like, do we have a meaningful relationship here? It's like, maybe not. You answer that relatively fast. Then I say like, well, are they doing some purposeful work? And oftentimes the purposeful work is usually missing. Where it's just like, you're not doing anything. You're not doing any work. You think that just, this meaningful relationship is just going to continue to sustain itself without you doing work. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, ask my wife. Like, I can't say I got a meaningful relationship and not do any work. She will, like, I got to do some work.
That's one of those things that will correct itself quick.
Oh, really quickly. Right? I will not be happy. She will not. There will be no happiness, right? And usually when I evaluate that dude, if I'm in the low, is because like, all right, like there needs to be some work that needs to happen. Or the reverse sometimes happens of like, man, I'm busting my butt. I'm like head down, I'm focused, I'm locked in. I'm doing a lot of purposeful work, but I haven't built any meaningful relationships. And it's just like, all right, like, let me go stop and, talk to somebody, right? And usually, using, that's my process for the, getting through the lows. And usually it gets me back to a high, and even if it's just 1% higher, throwing books out, Atomic Habits, 1% higher, man, 1%, it gets you some exponential growth real quick. And like, I'm happy with the 1% growth, dude. But like, yeah, man, meaningful work, meaningful relationships, purposeful work, it gets me through my lows.
And it works both ways, because if there's the negative stuff that builds up over time, it can create some huge challenges and huge gaps on the other side. So, it's kind of like the discussion of culture. In culture is always changing. You're adding new people into organizations. You're bringing in new customers into organizations. Money's changing inside organizations. The culture is constantly changing. It's never going to just stay the same. And as you go through it, you got to say, am I actually getting better? Am I improving? Or am I starting to take away from this, go back to the bank discussion, this bank account? Am I constantly, is something withdrawing these resources? And if something's withdrawing these resources and we get to a point where everything's depleted, then one of those blow up kind of things can happen. And it's a blow up kind of thing that sometimes is grounded in the fact that, hey, 2 years ago, when I was walking by the break room, you were sitting there playing video games, not out there banging away on the phones. And before you know it, you're like, where the hell did all this come from?
Dude. But usually, that, to your point, right? That 1% incremental growth, it can happen the other way. Like, you can 1% just continue to decline. And before you know it, it's like small declines. But before you know it, you just plummet. You just plummet. And yeah, like, where did that come from? Like, dude, it's been building up just because, you didn't correct it. You didn't make the adjustments.
How do you have those conversations with others? Because you talk about meaningful relationships. So meaningful relationships, let's just say we're going through some conflict. What do those conversations look like with others? Because in order to have a meaningful relationship, there's got to be somebody else there. So what's it look like when you get others involved in the discussion?
Yeah. So usually, if we're having a tough conversation, we probably have a really solid relationship. I've built the rapport where me, I'm shoot straight. I'm going to come in with my Saks hat on and just I am going to shoot straight. Right. And to some extent, people I feel like, man, I just have them. I don't back away from them. I don't sugarcoat them. They are not the most politically correct. I would prefer for HR not to be around. And they're not out of the ballpark, a lawsuit, but it's just let's keep it, let's keep it 100 and let's just have this conversation. Let's just what's up? Because ultimately, if I'm having a conversation, it's not because I don't want to see you succeed. If I didn't want, I wouldn't have a conversation if I don't want to see you win. I'll just watch you lose. And so if I'm having a conversation, it's because I want to see you win. It's I'd rather not have to figure out all the political correctness of getting this conversation out, especially if you know me. The only reason I'm not, because you know me, I'm coming from a good place, And usually I do that relatively. I come from a good place, people pick that up. They know me. I think of people that go through Rework Training, right? Individuals that go through Rework Training, oftentimes they're coming from retail jobs. And within our first 2 interactions, I am telling them that they suck. And you're like, dude, what? That's what's happening at your program? And I'm like, yeah, that's what's happening. Because usually by the second conversation, I've watched a video of them doing mock interviews. And while everybody else has probably told them like, oh, you interviewed great and you're doing such a great job. And like, gold star for you, participation award. I refuse to give out participation awards. I'm like, participation awards don't pay bills or win you anything. And so I'd rather just say directly, you suck. I'm going to make you admit like that you suck. Well, we're going to come to this conclusion together and then we're going to go off and fix it if you want to. But no, I don't shy away from it. I just like, I embraced them head on, grabbed the bull by the horns and just embrace them head on. And I think the tough part about having that mentality is that I know that I can't do that with everybody. There are moments where I see people failing and I want to help. And I realize if I take my approach to trying to help them, they'll be defensive and it'll make it worse. And I'll be frustrated because I tried to help and you weren't listening the entire time. And I'll be even more frustrated. And possibly, now I'm trying to sell you on an idea that you're not buying. And it's just like, and that's probably one of the most difficult parts of, being a leader just in general, I think. Like, you want to help everybody, but you can't.
You want to help everybody, but you can't. Yeah,
but
you want to help everybody, but you can't. I think one of the things that comes to mind as you're talking about it is intention and common ground. So like the common ground is, hey, we're all in this boat together. We're all in the same thing, working toward the same place. You've got to be realistic. Like, are we really? Like, really? Like, what is the commitment? Are we really in the same boat, working toward the same objective? Because if we're not, then that's a different conversation. And then once there's that common ground of, hey, we're all kind of working toward this, then it's the clarity of, what am I missing? What are you missing? What are we missing? What's missing in this whole piece? Because sometimes, and I know this, I have got some major blind spots. And part of the reason why I've got major blind spots, I get so focused on the thing I'm doing that sometimes you just don't ask the question and don't get that perspective shift. So if I'm going to have blind spots, I've got to be okay with the idea that other people are going to have blind spots as they go through it. But if we're all in the same thing, all working toward the same objective, and we can go through those blind spots together without being defensive and without having to justify what we're doing, then we can make progress. But if any of those things are not true, it's really hard to make that progress, meaning we're either not in the same boat or we want to justify certain things because we're not aligned around where our potential blind spots are. So people are tough. People are tough.
People are 100% tough. But I feel like sometimes we unintentionally make things tougher. And that's the tough. Like when I say this anecdotal knowledge, it's like you mentioned the same bus, like, are we on the same, working towards the same thing analogy? You're like, are we really, right? That's what you ask. Like, are we really working towards the same thing? And like, if you ask me that, if you're coaching me, you ask me that, like, I have no choice. You set me up to have to say yes. Like you set me up, can I really say no? If you're leading me and you say, are we working towards the same place? And if I'm like, no, not really, I can't say that, right? You set me up.
Why can't you say it? So why can't you say it?
What are you going to say back? Like if I say like, you're like, well, you don't need to be here. And it's just like,
really? So let's make a decision. And we just kind of move on. So, but it's tough, right? Because now you're in self-preservation mode and you're like
100%. Imagine if we made normal of like, man, instead of like, are we going towards the same thing? Imagine if, the analogy I use with students is like, look, we probably not going towards the same thing. However, I'm going this direction. You can hop on my bus and at some point you're probably going to hop off. Like, Shelton, I'm not going that far. I'm going, taking a train. I got on and I'm going to make a transfer somewhere down the line. And I'm okay with that. If I can help you get to that spot, if we're riding the bus and you're doing your part, if I can help you get to that spot fast, even better. Like, let's make that normal. Let's make that normal. Like the candidates that come through Rework Training, I present the entry-level role in tech sales. Entry-level role. Like, hey, you about to go be a BDR. I let them know, like, this job is about to suck because you about to work for somebody that got promoted potentially, that has no idea how to lead you, and you probably going to have to make 100 calls. And like, this is a trial by fire, but you're going to learn something. However, this is not the last. You should not be in a BDR role longer than a year. You should be able to get promoted to an AE and slowly start to go up this ladder. If you get promoted to an AE, that shows that you did your job well, and then maybe you want to jump over to marketing, but maybe you want to let's make this career path. Like, now where do you want to go? Maybe you don't want to be a tech sales at all, and you want to be, you want to go, you want to go get in real estate and you clearly need money to take the real estate exam and a license. And it's like, okay, well, great. If you want to go be in real estate, if I find that out, I'm like, well, how much money do you need to take this license and get your first property? $100,000. Okay, well, this is how many sales you need to make to get to $100,000 to get your first property. And when you get there, I'll holler at you later. I may buy a house from you if I get a chance to. But like, let's normalize that of like, I'm okay with that little bit of, that little bit of churn for the sake of somebody else's growth versus doing the whole like, are we really in this together? And it's like, oh, now you force the person to say, yeah, they go in a self-preservation mode, knowing that they're not in it together. They're not showing up as their whole self. They're just like, I don't know how to, like, I feel like I have to bleed whatever color our logos are, and I don't know how to answer the question. They're like, no, man, let's normalize. Like, look, you're on this bus. However long you're going to be on my bus is up to you. I would like to know where you're getting off at, and I'm okay with you getting off. In fact, I want to give you my blessings when you get off. Like, you're going to be your best self while you're on my bus, and when you get off this bus, you're going to be amazing. We're all going to grow. This is going to be a beautiful journey.
And I like the approach, because then it turns into, hey, if you just happen to be asleep, I can nudge you and wake you up and say, hey, here's your stop. Remember, we talked about this. Yes, like, we don't just kind of keep things moving along, but it's that clarity of communication that puts us in a better position so that we're not faking it. We're not just making stuff up and trying to be something that we aren't just because that's what we think we've got to be. So
100%. Really and it's like, it becomes a beautiful relationship. So I remember I was at a company and it was my time to get off the bus. And my manager knew it was my time to get off the bus. We had talked about it. I got to this point where it was just like, and it wasn't the hardest conversation because it was like, oh, I'm leaving. I'm not turning my 2 weeks. And I'm like, it was hard because it was like, man, we just had this beautiful journey together. And like, I want to kind of stay on this bus, but I know I need to get off. Like, it was just like a beautiful journey together. It was a beautiful journey together. And if more leaders took that approach of just like, everybody's not going to have my same dream. And so if I can help them fulfill their dream, like I'm doing them a service, and this could be a great thing, this could be a great journey.
It's amazing what happens when you take the time to get an understanding and listen to people and get a sense for what's important to them, like what drives them. What's the thing? What gets them excited? Is it watching the Jets or the Islanders play, football or hockey? Is it, getting out on a golf course? Is it going and getting on a bike? Is it cooking? Is it playing in a band? Like all of these things, if you're going to be a higher performer in any of those things, other than probably a high performer in watching the Jets play, but that's because it's a little bit off. But if you're going to be a higher performer in any of these things that you're going to do, there's going to be a process that you're going to have to go through. There's going to be you're going to learn, you're going to skin your knees, you're going to have to get back up, and you're going to have to be comfortable testing certain things. And it's hard for people. I think one of the challenges we run into, especially in tech sales, is when we try to connect the dots between what someone else's experience is in this area and how it potentially applies in this area. And I know that's one of the things that you're doing in Rework as you start to take people who have this amazing experience someplace else and they go into the software company and the software company has a conversation with them and like, I'm just not seeing how I can connect the dots between what you did, helping people with clothes in this retail place versus coming in and selling an enterprise software solution. So can you talk a little bit about how you do that with Rework?
Yeah. So I take things that people are familiar with and relate them to other things that they're not. One of the first things that we teach, is the interview process. How do you teach the interview process? Well, first of all, nobody teaches you the interview process growing up. It's like your grandparents tell you to show up on time and wear your best and like be early, but nobody teaches you how to interview. And so one of the first things we teach is the interview process, and we use the sales process to do it. All right. So killing two birds with one stone, sales process, interview process at the same time. And often when we ask people, like, do they know, what the sales process is? They oftentimes say no, like I'm not familiar with the sales process. And then we introduce it to them, by means of, like just the normal things that they go through. So like, we use Best Buy as our example. And we talk about like, hey, when you go into Best Buy and the person walks up to you and says like, hey, can I help you? And you say no. I'm like, why do you do that? So, well, because I don't want to be sold anything. I'm like, yeah, because somebody's about to put you in their process. And I'm like, but you're going to be sold something. Like, why do you know that? And they usually say, well, because in the past, when I did say, can I get some help? usually the person, they see I'm here looking at a TV and they say, walk up to me. So I'm like, well, if they see you looking at a TV in sales, in tech sales, any sales, they identified you as the correct buyer. Like, you're now a buyer. They identified you. Like, all right, great. I'm like, then what happens? Like, well, usually they tell me how many, like, the features and benefits of, like, the TV, like, it's the biggest TV, has HDMI cord, 4K, is this size, blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah. And I'm like, that's selling features and benefits. That's what we call that in the sales process. Like, you went from identified to being sold features and benefits. And then usually you ask them some questions and you all go back and forth of asking questions. I'm like, that's usually the question asking phase is the discovery phase, where they just understand, like, that's what the discovery phase is, back and forth. And then after they do the discovery phase, they attempt to close you. And they say, like, all right, well, you ready to buy this? And then they say, like, oh, we can put this on a credit card for easy payments of this. And they basically describe the terms and conditions. And I'm like, that's the closing phase. And I'm like, then what happens is you either have buyer remorse and you close them, they close you, or they don't. But I'm like, you completely understand the traditional sales process, which is horrible. And I know it's horrible. I'm like, don't do the traditional sales. And it clicks. So I'm like, man, that's the traditional sales process, 100%. And I relate the traditional sales process to the interview process, how people go and do the exact same thing of, like, you go to an interview and you start rambling off your features and benefits of, like, yeah, I'm smart, and I'm a hard worker, and I'm detail oriented, and I do this and I do that. And after you ramble off your features and benefits, you then go into the question mode, where the buyer then asks you, like, tell me about a time you had to hit a goal, or tell me about a time you failed at something. And after the buyer asks you questions, you then try to close them with questions like, well, is there anything that will prevent you from buying my products? And then so you either close the deal or you don't, and somebody ends up with buyer's remorse. But either way, like that, it clicks. It's like, oh, that's I understand the sales process now. Like, oh, that made complete sense of, like, now I understand sales process, and I understand, like, what not to do at an interview. And so we start there. And then from there, I mean, it's relatively simple. So from there, we have 70% of our program is taught by volunteers, and that's intentional. So we want people that have sales experience, and just by nature of, the technology industry and the problems that the tech industry has of lack of diversity, by nature, 90% of the volunteers that help out at Rework are not Black, brown, or people of color. But 90% of the volunteers that help out at Rework want to fix the problem in the tech industry, and they don't know how. They're like, nah, I grew up in an ecosystem where I didn't know any persons of color. And so I want to fix this problem in tech. So they come volunteer with their time and their talent and their experience of, like, hey, let me explain how sales works, and let me just give you what I know about tech sales. And it kills two birds, again, in one stone. For the volunteers, it now puts them in a diverse and inclusive environment where they, like, feel comfortable and can give back. For the candidates, or three birds. For the candidates, it puts them in an environment where, like, man, I didn't know anybody outside people of color. Now I know people in tech sales that actually care about my success. And then ultimately, the two kind of organically, what happens is, like, the volunteers meet good people, the candidates meet good people, and then the candidates ultimately end up with a job that they get their own job from, like, putting in work and spending time in the ecosystem that we created.
Absolutely awesome. How can people find out more about what you're doing with Rework?
Oh, please visit reworktraining.org and go to the volunteer tab, or just connect with me on LinkedIn. I actually prefer that people connect with me on LinkedIn. And despite the fact that, I know I'm asking just for, like, all my inbox to be cluttered, I actually kind of like that. So we're getting relatively big where I don't really know all the volunteers or candidates anymore. And it was a time where I knew all the people that walked through the door. And I kind of miss that sometimes. And so, like, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to, have a 15-minute conversation to tell you about how you can get involved with our organization.
Why tech sales?
Oh, why tech sales? So the growth and the money, if I'm just going to get straight to the point. So, like, when I was in banking, dude, I busted my butt, and I became a manager and got to a point where I was able to I didn't make six figures and as a branch manager. And I had the culture of, like, man, I had the suit and tie, and, I was 23 at the time. And it was just like, I was trying to fit in this culture that, the banking industry is hundreds of years old. The tech industry is less than 20 years old. It's growing. They're figuring things out. And it's the easiest way to not only grow as a person, but grow as grow your career, the opportunities for you to branch off into different, and just to learn business, right? Like I said, any other industry, you're not going to learn the business. Like the odds of you working with a CRO or meeting a CRO, meeting a CEO, meeting anybody in executive leadership in any other industry is just ridiculously difficult. The odds of me meeting an executive in any other industry are just like winning the lottery. Like I would have to, in tech, I mean, we mingle on Clubhouse. I'm talking to CROs, CTOs, CEOs, and so the opportunity for growth is just like, it's endless in the tech industry. Not only that, the money is there. Not my first commission check in tech sales, but I want to say 4 months in, my first big commission check was $6,000 in one check. And then later on, like a year later, I hit another like $11,000 commission check, which is like unheard of, especially if you're coming from a environment where you're just like, if your family was low income and, you need an opportunity, tech is it. And you don't got to be the brightest crayon in the box. Just come ready to work. And somebody's willing to give you a shot.
You got to sell a lot of Cutco knives to get to an $11,000 check.
Oh my
right?
God, dude. Oh man, yeah. Oh, knock on a lot of doors. Man.
Or find a lot of old folk homes and hang out. One of the things that for me that's fascinating about tech is out there to solve so many different problems. So if you deeply care about something, and I don't care what it is, you deeply care about Cutco knives or cooking with a sous vide or getting on an exercise bike, whatever it is, there's a company out there who is working on some kind of technology to help people do that thing that you care about better. And the same concepts that we're talking about here, whether it's going through understand the sales process from the perspective of what happens when you go into a Best Buy, or going through the interview process, these same stories, these same concepts, these same kind of fundamental truths still apply. The story I talk about when it comes to sales process, and I've been out of the game for a long time. I've been married for 20 some odd years, but Jen knows I affectionately say an eternity, but like picking up somebody at a bar, like this is something we can all relate to. We have if you're out there, you've either been picked up or you have tried to pick up somebody.
Yep.
And but stop complicating this by getting into, well, the first stage of the sales cycle is whatever. So really awesome stuff. So we've covered a lot of ground. I mean, we talked about you shifting roles and getting into the sales game, and then kind of this why technology sales is technology is important, and some of the ways that we complicate things like sales process and interview process, and how many times those things are just tied together through stories that we can all relate to, because we know what looks good and we know what feels bad. And it doesn't take a lot of time for us to figure that out. The senses kind of go up as folks are out there thinking about growing into their next role and figuring out, like, how do I get to that next thing? What are some things that they should keep in mind as they go through that process? Whether it's challenges, things that you wish you would have known before you took on your first CEO role. Like what do you wish you would have known?
Yeah, man. It's funny because, I look back and like the tools that I use to get me, I've changed my tool bag out a couple of different, times. Like when I was in Cutco sales, like I was scrappy and I had my go-to set of tools. Like I'm hustling, I'm scrappy, and it's by any means necessary. But to get to the next level, that go-to scrappiness, I wasn't able to use much of that. And I had to pick up a different tool along the way. Like I need to add something new to my toolkit to help me navigate this next level. And when I got to the next level, I had to find a new tool. It's almost like a video game. Like each stage, you have to find like before you can beat the boss at that level, you have to find kind of like, you have to increase your health. And you got to find this new tool to get that could beat the boss of that level. I feel like many, gamers out there like Zelda, the Ocarina of Time, you got to find something to help you level up and beat the boss. And I feel like that's probably one of the hardest parts. It's like, man, the same tools, from the previous level won't help you on the the next level, or sometimes help you, but you'll need to pick up something new along the way. And then probably one of the most difficult parts of like the growth is that not everybody's going to come with you on your journey of growth. And so there are people, friends are people that have things in common. You become friends with people that you have things in common with. And as you grow, you unfortunately you may have less in common with some people that are in your circle now. And you kind of got to be okay with that. Like, man, I gotta be okay with that. Like you're going to go farther apart. You may not talk as much. You may not see eye to eye as much. And, you had two options in those circumstances. You either could stop growing and just stay with them for the sake of staying with them, or you can grow and hope that they come with you. But again, to that point of, you're also going to pick up new friends along the way. And, that's cool too, but being okay with that growth and understanding like the same tools that help you to survive, in my case, aren't going to be the same tools that are going to help you to thrive.
I think that's a great way to summarize a lot of this. And as you're going through it, the story that I don't think anybody ever wants to be is, it's from Married with Children. Nobody wants to be Al Bundy, the peaked in high school dude. So it's like where you're going back in time and you're running into the janitor and you're going to go do the last play again. And both of you are going to break your back and do a bunch of things. Like there are some people where that's good. And that just happens to be their place. And that's where they're going to be. That's where they're going to be. But as you go through this and you start playing different levels of the game, and for me, it was Super Mario Brothers. But as you go through this, you're playing different levels of the game. You're going to pick up tools, and you're going to pick up capabilities, and you're going to know how to respond to certain things when they happen, so that you think a little bit faster. And you're not going to be ready for, heck, we can go to Pac-Man. You're not going to be ready for like the double cherry level in Pac-Man when you first start at the beginning, because the game will move a heck of a lot faster, and then it'll start to normalize. And one of the best ways to normalize is to go out and seek mentors and champions and coaches and friends out there who have gone through that period together. I'll share a personal story. So I've taken on a new CRO role here in the last 6 months. And, as you go through it, you realize, there's a lot of stuff that you can be doing. But if you try to do all of the things, the really important things get missed. And in the absence of leadership, as a leader in the business, being able to clarify what those important things are so that you can prioritize where you're spending time, energy, and attention. In the absence of that, folks will start to make your priorities for you. And that is a quick route to frustration, potential failure, risk, a lot of questions. So
you're no longer a leader at that point. Like you're no longer a leader at that point. If they're prioritizing for you, you've lost. You've lost. You're
just kind of hanging on. So not a good place to be. So you got to then go through and trust yourself to go back to your general principles, your general things that helped you get to where you are, and say, does this thing identify with properly? Is this where things are going? Sometimes it makes sense to go back to level 1 for a little bit and kind of work through level 1 and level 2 and level 3 and just get yourself back up and build the strength, and then remember how you start applying those things. So, hey, Shelton, this has been an absolutely awesome conversation. Where can people find out more about what you're working on, and where do you want to send them? And I know we talked a little bit about the rework stuff a little bit earlier, but where do you want to send people?
Yeah. So, honestly, reworktraining.org is a great place to, if you want to get involved and want to give back of your time and talent, visit reworktraining.org. But, otherwise, I love to meet new people. So like Clubhouse, where we met, great place to start. And then LinkedIn, and if you send me a LinkedIn request, don't send me the canned messages, just send it and I'll look you up. Or just if you connect with me on LinkedIn, just say Mike Simmons. No. Like use Mike as your e-coupon of like Mike Simmons, and I automatically know all right, gotcha, cool, you're in.
That's the first time I have been referred to it as an e-coupon. So that's good. I feel like I'm growing. Well, hey, thanks for listening to the Catalyst Sale podcast. If you know of anybody who would benefit from this conversation, please share it with them and let Shelton and I know that you did. Sales is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about yours?